Good morning, everybody. As Alice said, I'm Jim Griffin. I'm one of the developers here at AIM. I've spent a lot of time working with a product called Extender from a company called eOne. So today we're going to see how easy it is to add new functionality to Great Plains. So first, what is eOne Extender? I've taken a little snippet from eOne's website. Basically, they say this is the world in your hands without code and build your own Great Plains windows. Extender is a tool that allows regular people who don't know how to write code to build brand new screens within Microsoft Dynamics GP without a programmer in minutes. You just need to decide what data you're looking to store or what data you're looking to capture. Select the type of that data, and there's 17 different types that Extender supports. And these include checkboxes, currency fields, drop-down lists, lookups, dates, text fields, note fields, pretty much anything you can dream up. It allows you to add those things to existing Great Plains windows or build a whole application outside of the delivered Great Plains windows. Here's an example of some of the things you can do with Extender. You can customize Great Plains. You can control the Great Plains experience. And what exactly does that mean, controlling the Great Plains experience? Maybe you have a regular Great Plains window that when it comes up, you want to make sure certain fields are locked down, that the user cannot change those fields. Or you want to automatically fill in some data as soon as that window pops up and then put the cursor on the first field that the user normally needs to enter data in. That's what we mean by when we say control the Great Plains experience. So we can add new fields to existing windows. We can build new forms and new windows that are not connected to the existing windows. We can even make those two things talk to each other, which is fantastic. If there's extra things you need to bolt on to the existing Great Plains windows, you could build that and allow things like lookups from those newly developed windows and forms. You can add new menu navigation. And when we say menu navigation, we mean that top bar inside Great Plains. You click on that. That's how you get to your the new forms that you've created and the new windows you've created inside Great Plains. One of the big benefits is that this looks and feels just like what you're used to inside of Great Plains. And all this is possible without any code. No developer required, no programmer, no graphic designer, nobody who knows how to build applications. This is something that anybody can do. There are things you could do beyond the basics that you may need a developer for, but on the surface, for the simple stuff, if you're just looking to store some data, absolutely no coding required. And the question often comes up, can I do more if I need to? Yes, there's a whole advanced feature set inside of Extender. Extender Enterprise gives you an extra layer of control, some more flexibility, really opens up the world to customizations that, again, they're advanced, but you don't necessarily need a full-time developer to develop these solutions. So some examples of what we can do. We could run SQL Server code and scripts. So we can grab data out of a database. We can store data into a database. We can read data and validate it from that database. If you know the Dexterity language, Dexterity is the language or the development framework that Great Plains is built upon. If you want to extend some of the functionality and you know dexterity, you know how to interact with windows and forms and all the different items inside of Great Plains, you can do that with scripts inside of Extender. You could run Great Plains macros. You can open forms and windows automatically. You can create lookups that don't already exist in Great Plains, and that allows you to validate data against other data that exists within the system, or we keep mentioning those new forms. If you have new master data built with those forms, you can create lookups into that data. You can enable and disable fields. You can default data on windows. You can clear fields. You can lock fields down. Pretty much anything that the user can do by sitting in front of the window and clicking on it and moving around the screen, you can either write code or use the built-in functionality of Extender to do those things. Really opens up some automation possibilities and allows you to extend the Great Plains product. And of course, there's even more advanced things that we can do. We can trigger some of these customizations to happen when you open a window, when you close a window, when you're tabbing out of a field or using your mouse to move out of a field. We can do things like validate that data. Maybe there's a field inside Great Plains that you want to lock down to a certain set of values, but Great Plains doesn't provide that out of the box. Well, using Extender, when that user exits the field, we can check that data, validate it, and if it's not the data it should be or within your acceptable range, we could throw up an error message. We could force the user to go back in that field. There's a lot of different things we could do there. We can also trigger when the user clicks the save button, when they're entering a field, when they're exiting a field, when they're going to delete a record. Again, anything that the user can generally do from inside of a Great Plains window, you can trigger things to happen based on those actions. Extender also links directly into the Smart View and Smart List system. You can easily add the data that you've appended to your Great Plains system to existing Smart Views. You can create new Smart Views with just that Extender data. And it also opens up more options for drill down capability for historical transactions, inquiries. So we're not limited just to data entry screens. Once we've recorded that data, we have ways to get back to that data and view it. We can prevent users from changing that data, or if it's data that should be changed, we could turn on the functionality that even from a historical window, they can update data if your application requires that. So let's talk a minute about Extender versus traditional development. If you've ever worked with a developer to customize the Great Plains system, you'll know that it can be a long and tedious process, especially if they need to build new windows from scratch or if they need to modify existing windows. It's not something that the general user can do on their own. And if the general user does do that on their own, they run the risk of potentially messing something up inside Great Plains. All of a sudden, Great Plains starts behaving funny, doesn't save data the way you think it should. That's some of the risks you run. Well, Extender kind of does away with all that. With Extender, you can develop an application in a fraction of the time versus hiring a traditional developer to use something like Dexterity to add new functionality to Great Plains. Fraction of the time means a fraction of the cost. It's not nearly as expensive. You're not having to build things from the ground up. You're not having to spend all that time in low-level code. So your consulting cost is generally much lower. You can, in some circumstances, complete the screen design of the solution yourself. You can move fields around. You can decide which fields you want to see, which data you want to capture, what you should validate against. The logic inside of Extender is completely transferable. With traditional development, a question comes up a lot with who owns that intellectual property. Some developers like to keep their source code close to the vest. They build your app, you want changes made to it, you've got to go back to the developer, you've got to pay for those changes again. That's not the case with Extender. Whatever's done in Extender lives in Extender. It's yours. You need to transfer it to a different system. You can export it out of your Extender system, your Great Plains system, and import it into another Great Plains system without worrying about any intellectual property issues. And the biggest benefit of all is that those new functions that you've created using Extender, they look and feel just like what your users are used to when using Great Plains every day. All right, so I'm going to jump into a demo here, and we can show you just how easy it is to use Extender. And just as a preface to this, to show you how easy it is, I haven't prepared anything. I'm just going to shoot from the hip, and we're going to add something to Great Plains completely on the fly. All right, so this is just a plain vanilla Great Plains system. There's little to no customization in here at all. It's what you get out of the box. I'm logged into the TWO or the Fabricam company. If I go up here to Microsoft Dynamics GP, where did it go? There it is. It's a different menu than I was expecting. If we go to Tools, we see Extender and Extender. And this is the basic Extender interface. Everything's categorized into the different object types. So we have actions. Actions are things like scripts, macros, turning on and off fields. Forms, the best way to think of forms are new windows that were not developed by Microsoft and delivered with the Great Plains product. Imports allows you to import data into Extender windows and forms. Lookups, just like the name implies, you can look up data or develop lookups to existing data. Views allows you to take your Extender data and expose it to SQL Server if you need to use it in other applications. SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Server, comes to mind. If we need to use it there, we can easily, without having to go into SQL Server to build a view, create one with drag and drop capabilities from here. Then windows are the thing that allows us to extend our data inside Great Plains. So let's see, what do I want to, let's look at the employee card. Let's do something in there. Something different. Last time I did this, we did inventory. Let's do something different. All right, so you see here, this is just the plain vanilla employee maintenance screen. We have our additional buttons down here, but let's say we want to add some fields to get to know our employee a little better. Let's add some data. Let's see where they went to high school, what their favorite movie is, what their favorite band is. Now, granted, this isn't a great example, but we just want to do something simple here. If I were to hire a developer to do this, it would probably take, again, it's real simple data. It would probably take several hours for them to complete this. Well, instead, I'm just going to go in here, go to Windows, create a new window. Let me give it a name. Call it employee data. Call it extra employee data. Field entry is going to be a window that attaches itself to an existing Great Plains window. So I'm going to tell it I want to attach this to Microsoft Dynamics GP, payroll, and form. And where in the employee maintenance form. So automatically, it already knows that our key field is the employee ID. So all of this data that we're going to add or associate with the employee card is going to be keyed by a single field, the employee ID. This gives you a way to look that data up later, associate it with the employee, add it to things like views, reports. So let's see, let's add, what did I say there? What high school they went to? Or what was their high school mascot? You know, just so we could put some high risk data that somebody likes to fish for. But don't ever do this. Would do, would look for. It's like a high school mascot. We're going to give it, let's just make it a string, short string. We can have up to 30 characters. We can force it to be numeric, just uppercase, only letters that are uppercase. We can add a mask for things like phone numbers. I'm not going to do any of that here. Just going to put that there. Let's add another field. Favorite movie. Well, let's limit what they can add for their favorite movie. Let's see what's some good movies. Frozen, Pulp Fiction, Star Wars. There's a pretty diverse list there. Favorite band. See that? Let's make that a long string. Some bands have really long names. Let's say, let's add a checkbox. Has this data been reviewed? Let's give it a checkbox. All right, that's good. Let me go ahead and save that. I'm logged in as SA, so it's going to automatically build a view for us. I'm just going to mark all the fields. And inside the SQL Server database, it'll create a new view called EMPL data. We could change that if we want to. So save that and close that. That took us all of what, about 2 minutes? We go into cards, payroll, and employee. I now have this button up here that says additional. There are extra employee data. If I click on that, we'll see that our employee ID comes up right here. We could fill out this data. Blue Jay, favorite movie. Let's go Star Wars. You can see this field right here. This is our long text field. We have up to 254 characters to enter into that field. And then here's our checkbox. Has the data been reviewed? So 4 different types of data. I'm going to go ahead and check that off. I'm going to save this. And again, that took a matter of minutes. Maybe when we open up this window, we want to not allow the user to change the supervisor. Let's go ahead and add that. That's going to be kind of tricky. If we had somebody come in and develop this for us, let's go open to actions. Develop a new action. See how easy this is to implement. Again, all of this without really having any code. So we're going to do this when we open up a window. GP, payroll, employee maintenance. Here it is, employee maintenance field, or the employee maintenance window inside the employee maintenance form. And we're going to disable a field. So we're presented with this list of fields that already exist on that window. We're going to go down here and find our supervisor code. Save that. Save this. Again, probably less than a minute. Go back into our employee card, open up an employee, and I can no longer change. Let me do that. Well, okay, bad example. It won't let me change the text inside that field. I'd also need to lock down the lookup. But you see, as compared to these fields above it, the division, department, position, and location, I can clearly type something in here. Now, it's still going to compare it against the live data, but I can't do that in this supervisor field. And again, less than a minute or so to create that. Much easier than hiring a developer to customize this window and add code to turn this field on and off. So that's some really basic things we could do inside Extender. We could spend all day showing you some really advanced stuff, some really cool stuff, but I'm going to leave it there and open up the floor to questions. And I'm going to pull up, well, let me leave up a GP window for now in case anybody has anything they'd like to see.
Jim, can you do any type of data validation
Sure.
in those fields? Okay, I was just curious.
Stand her back up. See, let's build a lookup. Again, this is all made up stuff, so I'm going to validate against some inventory. Do our item number and our item description. So we now have a lookup. Go back into our window here. Their favorite item. Now we can go to this link lookup. Up. An item. Go ahead and save that. Save this. Yeah. And so here we already have our item pop up on this window, even though we already have data that we saved. And so obviously we don't have an item called test. It tells us the item doesn't exist, so it validates it. But I still have my lookup, and I can select an item here, and it validates it that it is. You see, I clicked outside of that window. Validates it that it is an existing inventory item. So again, super quick, super easy. Any other questions?
Jim, you mentioned something about importing off of exterior sources like Excel. Is that what I heard?
Yes. Let's go back into Extender here. It's gonna be hard to show this without some data, but yeah, you basically create a mapping of something like a here's what we have to work with: a CSV file, a tabs eliminated file, an Excel file, or if you're working with some legacy systems, sometimes they're fixed with, like, your first 15 characters is maybe a product identifier, the next 50 characters is a description, something like that. So when you tell it which window, with which extender window you want to pull your data into, you'll get this list of fields for that window. And then if you're working with something like Excel, and you've got each of these pieces of data in a separate column inside that spreadsheet, you would just tell it, which field number in here represents the data on the left-hand side. And then you save this, and you can go back into Extender. Once you have that spreadsheet prepared, you can run that import, and it will pull that data into Extender. So it allows you to populate that data without having to go into every single, in this case, we're dealing with employees, without having to go into every single employee and hand key that data. We could pull it into a spreadsheet, or we could pull it in from a spreadsheet or CSV file, any of those 4 types of files. Now, again, if we had to do this by hand, that's tough. The way the data's stored in the SQL Server, you generally need to use something like Smart Connect to pull that data in. To get a DBA, a SQL developer to do that, it's tricky just for the complexities of what's going on behind the scenes with Extender. Whereas here, we can build an import in a matter of minutes to import that data. Really useful tool.
What's the limit on number of fields you can add?
That's kind of a tricky question. You have 15 rows, each with 2 fields, but you're not limited to the number of windows you can add to an existing Great Plains window. So sometimes you run out of fields. If you've got 30 fields that you've used, you might need to go up here, go to extra windows, and add more windows to house additional data. We can also do things here like adding notes. Yeah, we can add notes. We can add a list of notes that are time and date stamped. We can, I had mentioned actions previously. If we had a script that we needed to run, maybe did some validation or pre-population of data or post-population of data for that matter, we can say there's an extra window and it's a run action, and it will run those scripts. But you can continue to add new window types of field entry and continually get 30 more fields. I think the most, in my experience, and I've been working with Extender for north of 10 years for sure. I think the most I ever really went beyond was a single window. I probably hit 45 fields at most, and those instances have been pretty rare. One of the things we didn't look at is forms. Forms are slightly different in that you're building essentially a window that's not attached to anything that already exists. One of the things we can do here, here first, further than that. So we have, this looks just like the other extender windows we've seen. We can, however, do what they call master detail type records. So if you had to capture maybe a running list of, let's say, disciplinary action, for lack of a better example, put a date in here, supervisor in here. So and then the reason. That long string. Yeah. Yeah, I think I can use this from here. So here we're going to get a series of records here. I get a second line, and so on and so forth. So you're not limited to just that flat data surface. If you do need something like master detail records, that's fully supported inside forms, and you can do that inside Windows as well. It's just easier to demonstrate inside of a form. And again, a form being data not connected to existing Great Plains windows, a window being data that is associated with an existing Great Plains window. And using the combination of those two things, you can actually build full applications inside of Extender. We've done that numerous times for customers. I know I went a little beyond what you asked, but does that answer your question?
Yes, it gives me options to previously unattainable results that I was looking for. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Welcome. Any other questions?
Are there any windows, Jim, that you cannot use it in?
Trying to think if I've ever run across that.
What about third-party ISVs? Can we do something with the third-party ISV?
Yes. Yeah, as long as it's integrated into Great Plains with Dexterity, you have access to it with Extender. And there's third-party products that AIM recommends, and we install a lot. Some of Integrity Data's products come to mind. I've often add Extender windows to those, and it's seamless. There's nothing special that you need to do. The third-party product show up here. So all of these things here are technically third-party products, even though they're delivered by Microsoft. I don't think I have any actual real third parties installed right here, right now. But they would show up here in the list after they're installed. And you don't have to go digging for fields. They pre-populate for you, just like when I click payroll here, I automatically got, the employee maintenance and everything that comes with it, that mostly being the key field. But it really, really makes that aspect of development easy. As a developer, that's definitely one of the more tedious things when bolting onto existing systems is figuring out where those bolt-on points are. Extender does that for you automatically. And again, regardless of whether that's a third party or not, or delivered from, out of the box Great Plains. Anyone else? All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. If anyone has any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you everyone for attending.